So the work was making sure that it was going to come out on time, and here I am. I'm standing and making it happen. So here we go.
Jeremy Renner, the actor who played Hawkeye across multiple Marvel Cinematic Universe films and his own acclaimed Disney Plus series, has reportedly quit the MCU entirely and signed a massive multi-year exclusive deal with Netflix that reportedly exceeds $200 million in total value, putting him at the center of the streaming giant's efforts to build prestige film and television content that can compete directly with traditional Hollywood studios. According to multiple sources with knowledge of the situation, Renner didn't just decline future MCU opportunities, he allegedly made a very public announcement of his Netflix deal specifically designed to send a message to Disney and Marvel about how poorly the studio treated him, particularly during his recovery from his near-fatal snowplow accident in 2023, when Disney apparently viewed his injuries as reducing his value rather than as circumstances requiring compassionate support and genuine care for an actor who'd served the franchise for over a decade. This is absolutely catastrophic for Marvel and the MCU on multiple levels. First, Hawkeye was one of the original 6 Avengers, and a core member of the team that built the MCU into the most successful franchise in cinema history, making Renner's departure the loss of another major piece from the original foundation that audiences and fans connect to the earliest MCU films. Second, Renner's very public exit and his immediate signing with Netflix represents a direct competitive threat, with one of Marvel's most recognizable stars now actively working to build prestige content for Disney's primary streaming competitor in a way that could attract other major talent away from the MCU. Third, the reported size and terms of Renner's Netflix deal apparently demonstrate that a major actor was willing to leave the MCU for better treatment and more lucrative opportunities elsewhere, suggesting that the MCU's once-iron grip on major talent is apparently deteriorating and that actors have genuine alternatives that can match or exceed what Marvel offers. Fourth, Renner's reportedly public manner of announcing the deal specifically to contrast with Disney's treatment suggests he wants to send a message throughout the industry about Marvel's talent management failures and about the costs of treating actors as disposable assets rather than as valued collaborators. Jeremy Renner's relationship with Marvel and Disney had apparently been deteriorating for years before his snowplow accident in January 2023. But the manner in which Disney treated him during his recovery apparently became the final breaking point that convinced him to leave the MCU entirely and to publicly explain his reasons for doing so. According to sources familiar with Renner's thinking and his discussions with representatives, the actor had been increasingly frustrated with several fundamental aspects of his Marvel experience across his years with the franchise. Creatively, Renner apparently felt that Hawkeye was consistently sidelined compared to other original Avengers despite being an equally important member of the team, that he never received a solo theatrical film despite other Avengers like Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and Black Widow getting major movie showcases, and that his character was often relegated to supporting roles in ensemble films, despite being an original member of the team that defined the MCU's entire foundation. Financially, Renner apparently felt underpaid relative to what other original Avengers earned for their work, that his compensation never reflected his actual importance to the franchise despite his years of service, and that negotiating with Marvel was consistently an adversarial process, where the studio apparently tried to pay actors as little as possible rather than recognizing and valuing their significant contributions to one of cinema's most successful franchises. But according to multiple insiders and sources close to Renner, the breaking point came specifically during and immediately after Renner's catastrophic snowplow accident on New Year's Day 2023, which left him with more than 30 broken bones, blunt chest trauma, and injuries so severe they were initially life-threatening, requiring multiple emergency surgeries and months of painful, difficult recovery, during which Renner had to rebuild his physical capability and strength. According to sources close to Renner during his recovery period, the actor apparently expected that a studio he'd faithfully served for over a decade, appearing in multiple MCU films, building the character of Hawkeye from a minor comic book figure into a beloved cinematic character, and helping to generate billions of dollars in revenue for Disney, would show genuine support and compassion during what was arguably the most terrifying and vulnerable moment of his life. But according to multiple insiders and people close to Renner's medical team and his representatives, Disney's response to his near-fatal accident was apparently focused primarily and almost exclusively on how Renner's injuries affected production schedules, release dates, and contract obligations, rather than on the actor's actual physical and psychological well-being or on providing support for someone facing a genuine crisis. Sources indicate that while Disney technically provided legally required benefits and the baseline support that contract law apparently mandated, the studio apparently had internal discussions about whether Renner's injuries constituted breach of contract if he couldn't fulfill scheduled obligations in planned MCU projects. Rather than expressing genuine concern for his recovery and his survival, rather than offering support that would reflect his years of service, Disney's approach apparently prioritized understanding what his injuries meant for their business operations and their release schedules. When Disney eventually approached Renner about future MCU appearances, apparently while he was still in the early and most painful stages of recovery, dealing with physical rehabilitation and psychological trauma from his brush with death, the studio's compensation offers were apparently shockingly low and deeply insulting, given his previous earnings and his importance to the franchise. According to sources with knowledge of the financial discussions, Disney offered Renner single-digit millions for potential future Avengers film appearances, apparently calculating that his injuries and apparent reduced mobility made him less valuable to the franchise than he'd been before the accident. The offers represented perhaps a quarter of what Renner had previously earned for MCU work, suggesting that Disney viewed his accident not as circumstances requiring compassion, but as an opportunity to renegotiate downward and to take advantage of his vulnerable situation. The suggestion that his near-fatal accident somehow made him fundamentally less valuable to the franchise, and that Disney's response to his medical crisis and recovery was apparently to try reducing his compensation while he was still dealing with trauma and physical pain, apparently devastated Renner emotionally and psychologically in ways that went beyond just professional disappointment about pay. The actor apparently realized during his recovery that despite all his years with Marvel, despite the significant physical training he'd undergone, despite the multiple MCU films he'd appeared in, despite helping build one of cinema's most successful franchises, Disney viewed him as a depreciating asset whose value apparently decreased the moment he became injured and vulnerable and unable to perform his typical action-heavy roles. According to insiders, Renner spent months recovering from his accident, dealing with intense physical pain, multiple ongoing surgeries, physical therapy, and the psychological trauma of nearly dying, while simultaneously dealing with the crushing realization that the studio he'd served loyally apparently didn't value him enough to offer genuine support, genuine compassion, or even fair compensation during his most difficult moment. During his extended recovery period, Renner apparently began exploring what his options might be beyond Marvel and the MCU. According to sources close to the actor, Renner reached out to representatives at other major studios and streaming services to understand what opportunities might be available if he decided to leave the MCU, and to explore what kind of treatment and financial terms other companies might be willing to offer to someone with his profile and experience. Netflix's interest in Renner was apparently immediate and enthusiastic, with executives at the streaming giant apparently recognizing that Renner represented exactly the kind of major star and proven talent that Netflix needed to compete effectively with traditional studios and with the MCU specifically. According to reports from sources familiar with Netflix's thinking and their approach to Renner, the streaming giant recognized that Renner was a major star with proven box office appeal and genuine global recognition from his extensive MCU work across more than a decade, a talented actor with demonstrated range who was capable of carrying both dramatic projects and action-oriented blockbuster films. Someone apparently deeply disillusioned with his current studio relationship and psychologically open to exploring new opportunities that would offer better treatment and better working conditions. An actor with massive and loyal audience following from fans who'd invested in his character through multiple MCU films, and who would apparently follow him to new projects at a different studio. Netflix apparently developed a comprehensive proposal for Renner that was specifically designed to offer everything that Disney apparently wasn't providing. genuine partnership based on mutual respect, significant financial investment that reflected his actual value, substantial creative control over his projects, and respect for the actor as a creative collaborator rather than as a commodity to be managed for maximum value extraction and profit. According to sources familiar with the detailed terms of Netflix's offer, the streaming giant proposed a multi-year exclusive deal worth over $200 million total that would involve multiple feature films for Netflix that Renner would star in and potentially produce through his production company, giving him creative control and financial participation in these projects. An original Netflix limited series that would showcase Renner in a complex lead dramatic role, potentially exploring territory that the MCU apparently never allowed him to fully develop as an actor, back-end participation and profit-sharing arrangements that would give Renner ongoing financial upside if his projects succeeded commercially and critically, aligning his financial interests with the success of the projects themselves. Complete creative approval over scripts, directors, and key creative collaborators, ensuring that Renner would have genuine input into the projects he was participating in, full control over his image and brand management through Netflix's promotional apparatus, giving him agency over how he was presented to audiences, a genuine commitment from Netflix to position Renner as a centerpiece of their prestige film and television strategy going forward, meaning his projects would receive significant investment, marketing support, and scheduling priority. According to reports, the Netflix deal also apparently included a significant personal and emotional component that contrasted sharply with Disney's apparently purely transactional approach. Netflix executives apparently expressed genuine concern for Renner's physical recovery and psychological well-being following his accident, conveying that they viewed him as a person first and a business asset second, a fundamental difference from how Disney had apparently treated him during his crisis. When Renner apparently decided to accept Netflix's offer and to publicly announce his exit from the MCU, sources indicate he reportedly wanted to be very deliberate and strategic about how the announcement was made and what message it would send. Rather than quietly signing with Netflix and moving on without comment, allowing Disney to control the narrative, Renner apparently decided to make a very public statement that would explain his reasons for leaving in explicit detail, and that would deliberately and intentionally contrast Netflix's approach with Disney's approach to treating talent. According to sources with knowledge of Renner's decision-making process, the actor apparently felt that by making his reasoning public and by explicitly discussing how Disney had treated him during his accident and recovery, he could potentially help other actors understand that they had options beyond the MCU and that there were studios willing to treat them better than Marvel apparently did. Renner reportedly gave an extensive interview to a major entertainment publication, apparently designed to reach both industry figures and the general public, where he discussed his decision to leave Marvel and to sign with Netflix in detail. In that interview, Renner made clear that Disney's treatment of him, particularly during his accident recovery and subsequent salary negotiation, had been the primary driver of his decision to leave the MCU and to publicly explain his reasons. Renner reportedly said something like, "I spent over a decade with Marvel. I was one of the original 6 Avengers. I was there from the beginning when the MCU was still being built. I helped create Hawkeye from basically nothing in the comics into a character that audiences loved and that became central to multiple MCU films. I gave Marvel so much. My time, my physicality, my creativity, and when I nearly died in an accident, when I was at my most vulnerable and dealing with trauma and recovery, Disney's response was to question my contract obligations and to offer me a fraction of what I'd previously earned because they apparently thought my injuries made me less valuable. That showed me everything I needed to know about how that company actually values talent, not as people deserving of respect and care, but as commodities whose value fluctuates based on their current usefulness." Renner allegedly continued with visible emotion. "Netflix offered me something completely different. They offered me a partnership where I'm treated as a creative collaborator rather than as a commodity. They showed genuine concern for my recovery and my well-being. They offered me opportunities and compensation that actually reflects my value and my contributions. They want to work with me, not just extract value from me and discard me when I'm damaged. That's the fundamental difference between a company that respects its talent and one that doesn't." According to reports, Renner also discussed in detail what his Netflix projects would involve and what he was excited about creatively moving forward. He apparently revealed that his first Netflix film would be an action thriller that would showcase him in a more complex, nuanced, and dramatically challenging role than Hawkeye had apparently allowed, exploring character depth and emotional complexity that the MCU structure apparently prevented him from fully developing. He apparently also revealed plans for an original Netflix limited series that would give him the lead dramatic role that he'd apparently never gotten in the MCU, a project where he would be the center of the story rather than a supporting player in an ensemble, where he could carry a narrative and where audiences would be following his character's emotional journey primarily. The announcement of Renner's Netflix deal apparently generated massive industry attention and apparently created significant shockwaves through Marvel Studios and Disney corporate. According to sources close to MCU leadership and to Disney executives, Marvel was apparently genuinely shocked that Renner would go so public with such direct criticism of Disney's treatment, and was apparently very concerned about what his very public and explicit exit might mean for their ability to retain other MCU talent who were presumably paying close attention to how the studio treated one of its original stars. The financial implications for Marvel are also apparently substantial and significant. Losing Renner means losing a key member of the original Avengers team that could have been brought back for major future MCU events, for Avengers movies, for celebrations of the original team, and for passing the torch moments with new generations of MCU heroes. Projects that might have featured Hawkeye now need to be reconceived and rewritten without him, potentially requiring expensive recasting of the Hawkeye role or significant narrative rewrites that address the character's absence. More significantly, and perhaps more damaging, Renner's departure and his explicit public criticism of Disney's talent management apparently sends a very clear message throughout the entertainment industry that working for Marvel apparently comes with substantial risks, and that the studio's approach to treating injured actors may not be ethical, may not be compassionate, and may involve taking advantage of vulnerable performers. According to industry observers and analysts who study talent management and studio practices, Renner's public statement about Disney's behavior apparently opened doors for other actors who'd experienced mistreatment or who'd felt undervalued by the MCU to speak up about their own experiences. Within weeks of Renner's announcement and detailed explanation of his reasons for leaving, other actors apparently began sharing stories about how Disney had apparently treated them poorly, how the studio had apparently underpaid them, or how the MCU system apparently worked to benefit the studio while limiting actor agency and creativity. Some industry analysts and observers apparently suggested that Renner's very public exit and his detailed explanation of his reasons could significantly affect Marvel's ability to recruit top-tier talent for future projects. If talented actors know that Marvel will apparently view injuries as reducing their value, that the studio will apparently offer reduced compensation during times of vulnerability and recovery, and that the overall approach to talent management apparently prioritizes the studio's financial interests over actor well-being, they might be considerably more cautious about committing to long-term MCU roles and relationships. The fan reaction to Renner's announcement and his detailed explanation has been overwhelmingly supportive of the actor and overwhelmingly critical of Disney. Social media exploded with fans praising Renner for standing up for himself, for being willing to leave a lucrative franchise because he was being mistreated, and for publicly explaining his reasons so that audiences could understand what had happened behind the scenes. Many fans expressed deep anger and disappointment at Disney for apparently treating Renner poorly during his medical crisis, for apparently viewing his life-threatening injuries as an opportunity to renegotiate his compensation downward, and for failing to show compassion or support to someone who'd served the studio faithfully for over a decade. Fans were apparently excited and enthusiastic about Renner's Netflix projects, expressing anticipation about seeing the actor in lead roles, where he would apparently have more creative control, better treatment, and more opportunities to explore his full range as a performer than Marvel apparently allowed. The Netflix deal itself has been widely analyzed in the entertainment industry and in the media as apparently representing a major strategic move by the streaming giant to build prestige action and dramatic content specifically around major movie stars like Renner, who have significant audience recognition and proven box office appeal. According to entertainment analysts and industry observers, Netflix's apparently strong willingness to outbid traditional studios for talented actors by offering not just substantial financial incentives, but also genuine creative partnership, respect, and conditions that prioritize actor well-being apparently represents a significant and potentially industry-shifting change in how streaming services compete for major acting talent. Several other prominent actors apparently began exploring their own Netflix opportunities and were apparently having conversations with representatives at the streaming service following Renner's deal announcement, suggesting that his successful exit from Marvel and his lucrative and seemingly positive Netflix signing might inspire and encourage others to consider similar moves away from the MCU and towards streaming platforms that apparently value talent differently. Jeremy Renner's reported decision to quit the MCU and sign with Netflix represents another significant and high-profile defection from Marvel by an actor who apparently felt mistreated, undervalued, and disrespected by Disney. Like other actors who've left Marvel expressing frustration, anger, and disappointment, Renner apparently concluded that continuing with the MCU wasn't worth the emotional and psychological costs, given how the studio apparently treated him, particularly during his most vulnerable and frightening moment facing recovery from near-fatal injuries. Renner's very public and detailed explanation of his reasons for leaving, focusing specifically on Disney's apparent lack of compassion during his medical crisis, on Disney's apparently transactional and opportunistic approach to talent management, and on the studio's apparent willingness to take advantage of his vulnerable situation, apparently validated criticisms about Marvel's corporate culture and values that other departing actors have made in recent years. For Netflix, Renner's signing apparently represents a major acquisition in their ongoing efforts to compete effectively with traditional studios and with the MCU specifically for prestige content and major stars with genuine audience recognition. The deal apparently signals Netflix's significant commitment to offering terms, treatment, creative control, and respect that can apparently attract top-tier talent away from even the most successful and most iconic franchises in cinema. For Renner personally, leaving Marvel and signing with Netflix apparently represents genuine liberation from a situation where he apparently felt fundamentally undervalued, disrespected, and treated as a commodity rather than as a valued creative partner. The actor apparently gets to move forward with creative projects where he has meaningful control, where he receives better financial terms and profit participation, and where he works with a studio apparently genuinely committed to treating him with respect and dignity as both a professional and a human being. The broader implications of Renner's exit for the MCU and for Marvel's overall approach to talent management will apparently become increasingly clear as other actors evaluate their own situations with the studio and potentially follow Renner's example of leaving Marvel for better opportunities, better treatment, and better working relationships elsewhere in the entertainment industry.